For today, we're playing Horizon Forbidden West with the RTX 4060, and we're starting it up at 1080p at the very high settings, no DLSS, and hit me up with that. There we go. So this card and the RTX 3060 Ti are basically the same. They're very close in terms of power. So this will be basically a 2-in-1 video, and I'll go over 1080p, 1440, and 4K as well as DLSS. Now 1080p, we are sitting in the mid 50s and the low 60s. Now in those heavier scenes, it will fall below this obviously. It's not really a big deal. The game doesn't stutter or lag in that aspect, but the FPS does again fall below 60 FPS. So we could use DLSS or play at a lower preset to get the FPS back that way. Or if you don't mind playing with occasional dips, then this is fine as well obviously. So you're right here, we're basically sitting at 60 FPS with dips into the high 50s. In the fight, down to the mid 50s. For the graphics, it's pretty good, looks fantastic. It's a bit soft obviously because we're playing at 1080p. It's not as sharp as 1440 or 4K, but it does the job just fine. For the VRAM, we're sitting at 7.5 gigs. With the 3080 at 1440p, it used up around 8 gigs of VRAM. This card only has 8 in total, so it might become an issue. And at 4K, it was around 9 gigs, so it will be going over the limit of this card. I think realistically for this card, I would pick the medium settings for 4K, and it should do a much better job. And 60 FPS will be far easier to actually achieve. Alright, time for DLSS. Let's go ahead and go down here and enable it, and we'll use the quality preset. Alright, quality DLSS, and FPS wise, we are sitting in the 70s. For the graphics, not as good as native, obviously. It's quite a bit worse. Mainly around the foliage, like the bushes and the tree leaves. Doesn't look great, looks a bit over sharpened. But overall, it's decent still, it looks fine. I think for me, I would disable DLSS in this one, at 1080p anyway, and just play at a lower preset. I think I'm going to skip the high settings and just go for medium. Because with the 3080, it was a very small FPS bump from very high to high. And we need far more than a couple of extra frames. So I want to get at least around a 20 FPS buffer here in case of a heavy situation. And playing at the high settings isn't going to achieve that. So now playing at the medium settings, here we go with that. There we go. Okay, medium settings, no DLSS. And this looks much nicer. Far more natural, and the graphics look pretty good as well. And FPS wise, in the mid 70s, there we go. Way better guys. I think at this point it might fall below 60 FPS occasionally, but it shouldn't be like very often. But yeah, this looks much nicer, far cleaner. I love how it looks now. So yeah, I think again for me, at 1080p, I would disable DLSS and just play at the medium settings or the high settings. It's really up to you. If you must get 60 at all times, then play at medium. And maybe use dynamic res at 60 FPS as well, just in case. But again, that's really up to you. I think I'm fine with this, to be honest. If it falls into the 50s, I don't really mind. The game doesn't stutter, so it should be a good time all around. 1440p, no DLSS at the max settings. We are sitting in the 40s. Not too bad. Obviously, in those heavier scenes, it will fall below this into the 30s and even the 20s probably. So DLSS is definitely a must. And to be honest, at this resolution, it does look quite nice. So it's definitely usable. And for the graphics, it looks amazing. It's super sharp, it's super clear. Love how it looks. Way better than what we had before at 1080p. So yeah, at this point you have the option of playing with a controller at 40 or 30 FPS. Should be quite good. Or you could play at a lower preset or again with DLSS and try to get far more. For DLSS, I'm going to go with the quality preset again, because unfortunately at balanced it does look a bit over sharpened like before. And we also have frame gen as well, which I'll use afterwards, which should give us 60 FPS and above. Alright, DLSS time, and so far in the mid to high 50s. That is pretty good guys. And for the graphics again, looks pretty good. Not as good as native, but it's very close. Now we are on the edge of 60 here, so falling below it will be quite easy. But regardless, not too bad. We gained around 20 FPS pretty much from the low 40s and the mid 40s, so now sitting in the 50s and the 60s. And now with frame gen active, we are sitting in the 70s. So again, around a 20 FPS increase from before. It's not exactly 20, but it's near there. And for the input lag, it feels pretty good. It's not bad at all. I don't really feel any extra input lag, to be honest. So yeah, definitely usable. It looks nice and gave us an extra free 10 FPS or 20 FPS. Whoa, look at that. It stutters as I'm loading in. That is interesting. Again, over here. So keep that in mind. The game does stutter as you load it into a new section. It wasn't there before, but it is showing up with FrameGen active. And on the 3080, it wasn't an issue as well. And now playing at the medium settings with DLSS as well as FrameGen. Let's try it again. There we go. FPS wise in the 80s now. Pretty good. So again, a small FPS bump on top. And at this point, a stable 60 should be doable at all times. I do want to see if the game stutters as I load in to the next section. Let's go try it out. Leave me alone. It was around right here where it started happening. So let's see. And so far, so good. Hasn't lagged or stuttered. Yep, seems very good. And it happened again, like around up here near the tents. And yeah, it's doing just fine now. There's been no stutters. Okay, 4K, no DLSS, no FrameGen, and at the medium settings. There we go. I'm going to skip the max settings for this one because this card is not a 4K card and it's going to have a hard time with the 8 gigs of VRAM. So we'll stick with medium, 4K, and we'll see if 60 FPS is doable at all. And there we go. At medium settings, 4K, with no upscaling, we got sitting in the high 20s. And in those heavier scenes, it will fall down below this, obviously. But the game looks fantastic. It looks amazing at 4K. It is so sharp. It is so crisp. It looks amazing. And now with DLSS, with the performance preset, we are sitting in the 50s. Way better, guys. It's a massive jump. It's from the high 20s and now sitting in the mid 50s. So around a 20 FPS increase. And for the graphics, a bit worse than native 4K, but it's very close. On keyboard and mouse, at 40 FPS, it feels okay. It's not great, but, you know, again, still playable. But if you have a controller, this should be far better. And with FrameGen active, we are sitting in the 60s. Look at that. The mouse movement feels... It's pretty good. It feels like 50 FPS, or maybe a bit below it. But it feels fine, you know? It's not too bad. I think still though, I would probably use a controller for 4K in this game. So I do want to go ahead and run to the next section and see if the game stutters at all. Okay, it does stutter occasionally. Oh yeah, it is. There we go. Yep. The stutters are back. Oh, there we go. It happened again. So you keep that in mind. It can play at 60 FPS, but the stutters are far, far worse. So yeah, that's about it, guys. That is Horizon Forbidden West with the RTX 4060. Thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time. Next video. See you guys there.